In this video, we're going to continue with the texturing of our scene. I want to now attack the glass dome and maybe get into some lighting. Now, to this point, all we've really covered is the table. We've made a little bump around the band. I went ahead and made just a blend, a gold blend for the ridges here, and I made a white blend for the snow. I haven't done any texturing there, but that's where I'm at. If I take a render, um, I think I have default lighting on. That's what I'm getting. Looks like I do have one light still on the seam somewhere. Uh, oh, I think I have default lighting turned on in my render settings, so that's probably where that. So if you go to the very bottom of the common tab, you have enable default light. So let's get started with the dome. I'm going to go back to 5, so everything's kind of grayed out. And I'm going to create a sphere. And I'm going to just kind of scale it into place best I can. Now I'm not doing anything crazy here. I will hit 3 to smooth it so it fits in that, just within that groove. I might scale it up some. Something like that looks fine. And then I'm going to tap the spacebar, go into the side view, and go into component mode by right clicking and delete these faces here. Go back. And this is going to be our dome. You can make yours oval or however you want it, higher or fatter or lower. This is kind of what I'm looking at. Alright, so we're going to assign a new material. It's going to be a blend, and we're going to hit render. And you notice that it's blend is showing a little bit of reflections here. I'm using Maya software, and how I'm getting that is because I have ray tracing turned on. Yours may not be on by default. So in your render settings under software, to see that, you go to the software tab, down to ray tracing quality, and just make sure this is clicked on. We may come back to this later to up the reflections and refractions, the number of bounces there. But for now, that's fine. And if you really are concerned about render times in the beginning while we're tweaking things, we could turn this off. But when I'm working with glass, I want that on so I can begin to see reflections. Okay. First, glass. Glass is transparent, and so let's work on that. So we have a blend 12. Let's call this glass matte for glass material, glass matey. All right, and I'm going to go to the transparency and take that all the way up. And as I do that, you will see a surface that can pass for glass. It's alright, you can barely see the outline, but what I want to show you in this video is how we can take that to the next level, because in the real world, glass especially, it's much more reflective on the faces that are facing away from you. Things that are facing you directly are less reflective and more transparent, and once it gets to the edges, it gets less transparent. That way you can actually see the edge of the glass. And in the node editor, in the hypershade, we can begin to play with some new nodes to maybe get that. So let's take a look. I'll drag this over here, leave my attribute editor open, and open the hypershade. And glass matte. Is glass matte up here? It looks like it's not up there. I may have to click off and see if it updates. So I'm going to middle mouse drag this into our node area, and then I'm going to map it out and select that and map that out. Alright, so we have a glass material. All we've played with so far is the transparency. So I want to introduce two new nodes. In the create area, I want to make a ramp, not the ramp shader, but just the ramp material. I'm going to middle mouse that here, and it comes with its Place 2D texture node. And all I did is type in ramp here, and I'm going to go ahead and delete its 2D texture node. We're not going to need it. And there is a utility node called the sampler info node. And as I begin to type that, it comes up. I'm going to middle mouse that in here as well. Alright, let's see if I must have clicked it twice. Alright, so the sampler info node allows us to take certain information from a mesh. So this facing ratio can allow us to do some cool things. So I'm going to plug this facing ratio into the UV coordinate of a ramp. And a ramp is just a gradient. And I'm going to take this facing ratio here and go to the V coordinate. And as we open up our ramp, you see a ramp is just a gradation where we can between black and white, and we can move these around. We can delete them, create new ones. I can change the color to. So anyway, you can use ramps for texturing. They're kind of cool. But I'm just going to create a new one and just make it black. And it's going from black and white. And I'm going to take the out color of this ramp and go to the color of my dome here. And what I probably should do here is I need to take the transparency back up, because if we can't see anything, it's not going to show up. So and I'm going to hit number 6 so we can see textures. And if you notice, there's a little black edge around our dome here. And if I go to my ramp and up this edge, you see what's happening here. So to the very far right, those are faces that are facing the viewer most directly. And as those faces get where they face less and less toward the viewer, those are black. Okay, which is kind of neat. And I can reverse this, where I have white and black. Well, transparency works on a black and white map. So we can pull out a black and white map from this ramp and put it in our transparency, so that areas, as we see when transparency is black, that means things are fully opaque. There is no transparency. When things are white, that means it's fully transparent. So we want the white in the middle and black on the edges, just how it is now. So I'm going to tweak it and give us a little more black, and maybe change our interpolation to something smoother. So this area we want transparent so we can see our snowman scene, and then the edges we just want more opaque so as not to just blend into the background. So once we have that, we can break this connection with a color and then take this out color to the transparency. So we just click here and feed it to the transparency. And transparency will accept all 3 channels. As we do that, you notice this is white, and so the edges are opaque, and the center is more clear. Now you may see some specular highlight, and that may make this confusing. So if I go into this thing in the center, is not, that's our specular highlight. That's not, doesn't have to do with transparency. I'm going to turn that off just so we can see, and maybe I don't need that much opaque on the edge. Most of this should be transparent. Okay, it still looks kind of cloudy. Another thing we can do is take a look at the diffuse value, which may help us out there. So we click our blend and see how our diffuse is way up. Let's take that down to 0 and see what happens there. I'll just do a small area here. So now we don't see any diffuse, which in glass you really wouldn't have much diffuse. But just so we can see a little bit of the edge, I'll bump that up slightly. Alright, so now that's how our transparency is now transparent in the center and more opaque on the edges. Now let's take a look at our reflectivity.